Welcome back to another episode of GP Builder's Tips. As much as we loved building the Liger Tail, there was one thing we couldn't truly get over. These guns aren't red. I feel lied to. So for this video, we made it our mission to make a somewhat game-accurate Liger Tail. It's been quite some time since I've picked up an airbrush aside from the Gundam marker system, so this was a bit of a relearning experience for me as well. I had a couple of main goals for this task. 1. Fix most of the glaring seam lines. 2. Paint the reds as well as the stickered parts. 3. Panel line and flat coat the whole thing. 4. Get all of the camera details. And 5. A little bit of minor weathering. So, let's tackle them all in order. For full transparency, I really underestimated some of the seam lines on the Liger Tail. I thought it'd be a simple matter to get rid of some of the ones along the shins and the shoulders, but the flashing, which are these raised mold lines, plus these details, made it a bit of a hassle to get at the pooled cement and plastic between them. Regarding flashing, I like to get rid of them by dragging the blade of my X-Acto knife gently across them, then sanding down the rough patches accordingly. I 100% could have done a lot better on the shin seams, and the shoulder ones I goofed entirely. I ended up oversanding some of the raised details, and actually had to remake some of them out of runner bits and nubs. I do not recommend this experience to anyone, but if you need to, here's how I did it. I took lengths of the green runner and sanded it down about 1mm in size. I cut off tiny bits of this, very carefully aligned these, and then cemented them to the shoulder. I cut the excess off and then I sanded them down and rounded them out, trying to keep it as close to the original shape as possible. The hardest part of this really was just remembering where the details were in the first place. There are, of course, some other seam lines along the arms, some hidden ones along the side of the torso, as well as the weapons, but due to time constraints, I unfortunately could not fix them all. Next up is the paint. Like I said, it's been a while since I've painted, so I've neglected to really look at many of these paint guides on kits for a while. Imagine my surprise when I realized there's absolutely no color mixing guide here for any of the weapon colors. They really just say, yeah, paint these in the same gray they were on the runners. Okay. Thankfully, I have my AC6 machine here in my office ready to go, so I tried my best to mix a dull red to match. I'm using Char Red as a base since it was the closest color, and then I dulled this with a drop of MS Gray and a drop of regular black paint. And then I mix the tiniest bit of metallic gray just to get some flakes in there. And of course, I keep a bottle of Retarder Mild handy, since this slows down the drying time of lacquers in case I want to hand paint using them. While I was masking some of the parts on the songbirds, I realized how time consuming this would be. So I ended up freehanding quite a bit of the parts, namely some of the details on the back, some sections of 3 of the weapons, as well as the parts that needed stickers since I accidentally shredded them. I figured this would also be a good way to compare hand-brushed quality as opposed to an airbrushed finish. So I went ahead and airbrushed some of the easier bits like the ammo drum, the barrels for the songbirds, and the front hatches of the missile launcher, plus everything I'd already masked on the explosive thrower. For some of the details on the songbirds, I opted to paint first and use a bit of thinner to erase some details that were supposed to remain gray, to save me time on masking. There's often arguments about what's better between airbrushing and hand painting, and honestly, it's incredibly useful to practice both. Now, I panel lined most of this kit already in our previous review, but of course, I had to panel line on top of what I'd painted. It's always better to panel line on top of a non-matte surface, so using gloss paints or a light gloss top coat to protect your painted layers definitely helps. Tamiya panel line fluid is also enamel-based, so it has little to no interactivity when being applied and cleaned on top of acrylic or lacquer paints. I also wanted a more real and gritty look, so I decided to use Super Smooth Clear Flat to top coat this. I've also found that having a flat surface to work with makes for some fun weathering applications. There was absolutely no way I was going to leave this kit without doing the eyes, and while I was at it, I decided I might as well paint up almost all of the cameras as well. Thankfully, there's a super helpful paint guide for this, which is straight up just metallic red, though for the eyes I tried layering light orange and reds at first. I always have mixed results with a brush for such small details, so one of my favorite alternate methods for detailing like this is using a sharpened toothpick to apply paint. It really helps with getting in some areas like small panel lines or minuscule tips like the Songbird's cameras and the cameras on the back of the chest. I've also found that it's better to do this after the top coat since the flat coat changes the finish of the metallic paint. Of course, this kit looked way too clean for someone as rough and tumble as Gun 1 Michigan, so I decided to weather it too. Using the hard and soft weathering brushes, I like to soak up a little bit of black paint and rub 90% of the excess off on a paper towel. Then using the little bit left on the brush, I like to alternate between modeling and dry brushing, so I can pockmark the armor with stains and then blend dark dusting on all the raised details and edges. My problem is always that I have too much fun with weathering in general, and I definitely go way overboard with it, so don't be like me. When it comes to weathering, sometimes less is truly more. And there we have it. You definitely don't have to do everything you see here. Even just adding a bit of red, even with Gundam marker, or just applying color to the eyes would significantly improve how the Liger Tail looks out of the box. I do wish I'd done better on a lot of the seam lines and cut back a lot, on the sloppy weathering, but this build did a lot to ease me back into the swing of things. I also realized there are a few white and red details on the chest that I completely forgot about, but it's so hard to see them on the in-game model. I actually honestly can't even tell if that's supposed to be white or a shiny gunmetal. Hopefully something in this video helps you out with this kit or any other build you tackle in the future. As always, thanks for watching.